At exactly 2 a.m., the kind of hour when the world feels hollow and quiet, Mark Reynolds stood frozen in the narrow hallway of his apartment, staring at the woman sobbing on his doorstep. Mascara streaked down her cheeks like ink spilled across paper, her shoulders shaking as if she were holding up the weight of the night itself. For 3 years, this woman had been the source of his stress, his fear, his exhaustion. She was his boss, the woman who had made his life hell, and now she was here, broken, vulnerable, and asking for help in the only way she seemed capable of anymore, by simply showing up, period. Mark would later think about how strange it was that life-changing moments rarely feel dramatic when they happen. There was no thunder, no music swelling in the background, just the hum of the hallway light, the distant sound of traffic, and the quiet breathing of his 8-year-old daughter sleeping in the next room. Yet something deep inside him shifted the moment he opened that door, because standing there was not the cold, untouchable executive he knew from the office. It was a woman who had finally run out of strength. Only hours earlier, Mark had been sitting on his worn couch, trying to enjoy a rare Friday night with his daughter. Lily had been hunched over the coffee table, tongue poking out in concentration as she colored in a picture book, narrating her own little world with innocent excitement. Mark's phone had buzzed again and again, lighting up the room like an accusation. 5 missed calls, all from the same name. Normally, he would have silenced it without hesitation. He had learned long ago that nothing good ever came from answering after-hours calls from Victoria Winters. Victoria was brilliant, ruthless, and endlessly demanding. Since the day Mark joined the marketing agency, she had pushed him harder than anyone else. When his wife walked out and left him alone with a toddler and a mountain of responsibility, the pressure only intensified. Late nights, weekends stolen, criticism delivered with surgical precision. She never cared that he was a single father. In fact, it often felt like she resented it. To her, work was everything, and anyone who dared to need something outside of it was weak. But that night, the phone didn't just ring, it changed. A message appeared on the screen, simple and stripped of all authority. "Please help, I'm in trouble." That single word, please, unsettled him more than any angry voicemail ever could. Lily had looked up at him then, her eyes wide with curiosity, asking who kept calling. Mark had lied gently, telling her it was nothing important, even as his chest tightened with a feeling he couldn't explain. He told himself he was doing the right thing when he asked their neighbor to watch Lily. He told himself it was just basic decency, nothing more. 30 minutes later, he was standing in an upscale bar, watching his powerful boss argue with a bartender who refused to give her back her car keys. The sight was jarring. Victoria, always immaculate and controlled, looked like someone who had finally lost a battle she'd been fighting alone for too long. Her posture sagged, her voice slurred, her confidence cracked around the edges. When she saw Mark, relief washed over her face so quickly, it startled him. In that moment, she didn't look like his boss. She looked like someone clinging to the last familiar face she could find. Mark took responsibility without thinking, guiding her out, ignoring the stares, unaware that across the street, a critical client was watching everything unfold. Unaware that this small act would ripple outward in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The drive to her apartment was quiet, heavy with unspoken truths. When Mark stepped into her penthouse, he felt the emptiness immediately. The place was flawless, but lifeless, more showroom than home. As he searched for water, he noticed a single photograph on the refrigerator. Victoria, younger, smiling freely beside an older woman. It was the only sign that love had ever lived here. When Victoria told him it was her mother, and that she had died 5 years ago that very day, everything suddenly made sense. The harshness, the walls, the endless work. Grief had hollowed her out, and she had filled the space with control and ambition, mistaking survival for strength. That night, when her phone rang, and the future of the agency threatened to collapse in her unsteady hands, Mark stepped in again. He spoke calmly, respectfully, shielding her dignity when she could not. He smoothed over anger, rebuilt trust, and protected her reputation without asking for anything in return. When he left her apartment, he fully expected that by Monday morning, none of it would matter. People like Victoria Winters didn't change. They forgot. But Victoria didn't forget. Monday arrived with spilled cereal, rushed mornings, and the familiar fatigue of a single parent doing his best. Mark walked into the office, braced for impact, ready to be ignored or punished for imagined offenses. Instead, he found Victoria standing by his desk, holding 2 cups of coffee. She remembered how he took it. That alone was enough to shake him. Behind closed doors, she did something even more unexpected. She acknowledged her cruelty. She took responsibility. She admitted that she had punished him for having what she had lost: a family, a reason to go home. Then she handed him a future he never thought he'd be allowed to have. A promotion, flexibility, respect. Not as a favor, but as restitution. For the first time, Mark saw her not as an obstacle, but as a human being shaped by loss and fear. And for the first time, Victoria saw in him something she had buried long ago. The reminder that love, responsibility, and vulnerability were not weaknesses, but sources of strength. The real transformation didn't stop at the office. Days later, Victoria stood awkwardly in Mark's modest apartment, holding homemade soup and children's books. She sat with Lily, listened to her stories, laughed at being called the Dragon Lady, and accepted the truth in a child's simple observation, that being smart meant nothing if you didn't know how to be happy. From that point on, change became visible, not just in grand gestures, but in small, consistent ones. Victoria became fair, supportive, human. Mark found balance. He finished the storybook he had been writing for Lily, a dream he'd nearly abandoned. The office buzzed with rumors, but none of them captured the truth. The truth was that kindness, offered freely at the right moment, had cracked open 2 guarded hearts. 6 months later, as they sat on a park bench watching Lily chase butterflies, the weight of that night felt distant but meaningful. Neither of them pretended it hadn't happened. Instead, they honored it by living differently. Victoria had learned that strength didn't mean standing alone. Mark had learned that compassion could open doors he never thought were meant for him. Life didn't change because of a promotion or a saved account. It changed because someone chose to answer a call when it would have been easier not to. Because someone chose kindness over resentment. And because 2 people, shaped by loss in different ways, allowed themselves to be reshaped by empathy instead. If it reminded you that even the hardest people carry unseen wounds, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this aren't just meant to be heard, They're meant to remind us that the smallest acts of humanity can change lives forever.